The alien coalition known as the Krill had spent decades preparing for this moment. Their vast armada stretched across the void of space, a floating fortress of steel and energy shields, hovering at the edge of human-controlled territory. For years, they had waged war against humanity, striking colony after colony, leaving destruction in their wake. Billions of lives were lost, cities reduced to ash, and Earth itself was on the brink of collapse. Yet now, as they waited for humanity's final counterattack, the retaliation that would determine the fate of both species, they saw something unexpected. Instead of the massive fleet they had anticipated, a single vessel appeared on their sensors. It wasn't sleek or intimidating like the legendary warships of old. This ship was battered, its hull scarred with craters and patched-up damage from countless battles. The name Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, was faintly visible along its side, illuminated by the dim light of a distant star. To the Krill, it seemed almost laughable, a pathetic gesture from a dying race. Inside the command center of the Krill flagship, Commander Zoreth stood tall, his insectoid frame casting long shadows under the red glow of the monitors. His advisors buzzed around him, their chittering voices filled with confusion. "Is this some kind of trick?" one asked. "A decoy," another suggested. But Zoreth remained silent, his glowing eyes fixed on the image of the lone ship. He had studied humans during the war. Fragile creatures, yes, but also unpredictable. If anything, their resilience terrified him more than their weapons. On board Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, Captain Ryan Carter sat in the pilot's chair, his hand steady on the controls. His face was lined with exhaustion, his dark hair streaked with gray. Beside him, Dr. Laura Bennett reviewed data on a tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. In the back of the cockpit, Jake Monroe, the ship's pilot, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Elena Torres, the engineer, worked quietly at her station, keeping the ship's systems running despite its age and wear. Ryan broke the silence first. "They're watching us," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Let them look." Jake frowned. "You really think this is going to work? Just showing up like this?" "It has to," Ryan replied. "If we don't try diplomacy, there won't be anything left to fight for." Laura glanced up from her tablet. "He's right. We can't win through force alone. Not anymore." Elena didn't say anything, but her fingers moved faster over the console, double-checking every system. She knew as well as anyone that their chances were slim. One ship against an entire armada. It sounded insane, but insanity was all they had left. As Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, drifted closer to the Krill blockade, the enormity of what they were about to do settled over the crew. They weren't soldiers or politicians. They were survivors. Each of them carried scars, not just physical ones, but memories of loss and pain. Ryan's wife and child had died in the first wave of Krill attacks. Laura had seen entire research teams wiped out in seconds. Jake still bore the guilt of abandoning a squadron during a failed mission. And Elena, she didn't talk much about her past, but the way she worked tirelessly hinted at a deep need to make things right. Finally, Ryan activated the comms system. "This is Captain Ryan Carter of Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk. We come in peace and request an audience with your leader." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a deep, guttural voice responded. "State your purpose, human." Ryan took a deep breath. "We're here to end this war, to find a way forward for both our peoples." The Krill commander hesitated before replying. "Very well. You may board our flagship, but know this: any sign of aggression will result in your immediate destruction." Ryan nodded, though the Krill couldn't see him. Turning to his crew, he gave a small, reassuring smile. "Let's hope they're listening." And with that, Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, entered the heart of the Krill armada, carrying not weapons or armies, but the fragile hope of a better future. Inside Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the air was tense. The crew moved quietly, each lost in their own thoughts. Captain Ryan Carter sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the massive Krill flagship looming ahead of them on the view screen. Its jagged edges and weapon arrays made it look like a beast ready to strike. Beside him, Dr. Laura Bennett reviewed the data they had prepared for the meeting. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the holographic displays, but her focus never wavered. Jake Monroe stood near the back of the cockpit, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. His sharp eyes scanned the screen showing the Krill ships surrounding them. "This feels like walking into a trap," he muttered under his breath. Elena Torres, the ship's engineer, glanced up from her station, where she was monitoring the engine's performance. "Maybe it is," she said softly, "but what other choice do we have?" Ryan turned to face them, his expression serious. "We're not here to fight. We're here to talk. If we can make them see reason, maybe, just maybe, we can stop this war before it wipes us all out." Laura nodded in agreement. Ryan's right. They need to understand that not all humans are responsible for what happened. Some of us want peace. Jake snorted. "You really think they'll care? They've been killing us for years. Why would they listen now?" "Because they're losing too," Ryan replied firmly. "This war has cost them just as much as it's cost us, maybe more. And if we don't try something different, none of us will survive." Elena adjusted a dial on her console, ensuring the ship's systems were stable. She didn't say anything, but her silence spoke volumes. Like the others, she knew the risks. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, and they'd be dead. But she also knew that staying silent wasn't an option either. Humanity couldn't afford to give up. Not yet. As they approached the Krill flagship, Ryan gave final instructions. "Laura, you're coming with me. Jake, Elena, you stay here and keep the ship ready. If things go south, you get out of here. No heroics." Jake opened his mouth to protest, but Ryan cut him off. "That's an order. Got it?" Reluctantly, Jake nodded. "Yeah, I got it." A few minutes later, Ryan and Laura stepped into the shuttle that would take them to the Krill ship. The small craft detached from Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, and drifted toward the flagship, escorted by 2 Krill fighters. Through the shuttle's windows, they could see the sheer size of the alien vessel. It was overwhelming, a reminder of how outnumbered and outgunned they truly were. Back on Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, Jake paced anxiously while Elena focused on her work. "I don't like this," Jake said, breaking the silence. "It feels wrong. What if they kill them the moment they step on board?" Elena looked up, her dark eyes steady. "Then we follow orders. We leave. There's no point in all of us dying." Jake shook his head. "But leaving them behind, it doesn't sit right with me." "It won't sit right with any of us," Elena admitted. "But sometimes doing the hard thing is the only way to win." Meanwhile, aboard the shuttle, Laura tried to calm her nerves. She glanced at Ryan, who seemed unusually calm despite the danger. "Do you really think this will work?" she asked. Ryan exhaled slowly. "I don't know, but I believe it's worth trying. If we can show them that we're willing to listen, maybe, just maybe, they'll do the same." The shuttle docked with a low thud, and the doors hissed open. 2 towering Krill soldiers greeted them, their armored bodies gleaming under the harsh lights. Their glowing eyes scanned Ryan and Laura, assessing them like predators sizing up prey. Without speaking, the soldiers motioned for them to follow. Ryan took a deep breath and stepped forward, Laura close behind. As they walked down the corridor, the hum of alien machinery filled the air. Every step felt heavier than the last, but Ryan refused to show fear. He reminded himself why they were there, to find a way to end the bloodshed, to give humanity a chance to rebuild. Finally, they entered a large chamber where Commander Zoreth awaited them. The cryo leader was even larger than the soldiers, his exoskeleton polished to a mirror-like shine. His voice rumbled like distant thunder when he spoke. "State your purpose, human." Ryan met his gaze without flinching. We're here to negotiate, to find a way to stop this war, for both our peoples. Zorath tilted his head, studying them with an unreadable expression. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, he gestured for them to continue. Commander Zorath's glowing eyes narrowed as he studied Ryan and Laura. The chamber was cold, its metallic walls reflecting the dim red light that pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Around them, Krill soldiers stood motionless, their towering forms casting long shadows. Ryan could feel the weight of their stares, but he kept his focus on Zorath. He knew this moment would define everything, whether they lived or died, whether peace was even possible. "We've come to negotiate," Ryan repeated, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "This war has destroyed both our peoples. It needs to end." Zorath tilted his head slightly, his mandibles clicking softly. "You dare to speak of ending the war? After your kind attacked us without provocation." Ryan shook his head. "Not all humans were responsible for that attack. There are factions among us, rogue groups that acted without authority. They used stolen alien technology to provoke you into war. We didn't know about it until it was too late." Laura stepped forward, holding up her tablet. "We have evidence," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Records of experiments conducted by these rogue factions. They wanted to weaponize ancient artifacts found on distant planets. That's what started this conflict, not humanity as a whole." The Krill commander paused, his glowing eyes flickering between Ryan and Laura. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of machinery. Then Zorath gestured to one of his advisors, who took the tablet from Laura and began reviewing the data. Ryan watched carefully, trying to gauge the Krill leader's reaction. It was impossible to read his expression, but the slight twitch of his antennae suggested curiosity, or perhaps doubt. Jake and Elena, still aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, monitored the situation through the shuttle's external cameras. Jake paced back and forth, his hands clenched into fists. "This is taking too long," he muttered. "What if they're stalling? What if they're planning something?" Elena didn't look up from her console. "They're not stalling. They're thinking. This is big, Jake. Bigger than any of us." Jake stopped pacing and leaned against the wall. "I just don't trust them. Not after everything they've done." "Neither do I," Elena admitted. "But we don't have a choice. If this works, it might save what's left of us." Back in the Krill chamber, Zorath finally spoke. "Even if what you say is true," he rumbled, "why should we believe you? Why should we stop fighting now?" Ryan took a step closer, his voice filled with urgency. "Because continuing this war will only lead to mutual destruction. Other species are watching. If we destroy each other, they'll move in and take what's left. Is that what you want? For everything you've built to be erased?" Laura added, "And because it's the right thing to do. Both our peoples have suffered enough. We can find a way to coexist, if we try." Zorath's gaze lingered on Laura for a moment before shifting back to Ryan. "Coexistence," he echoed, the word strange in his guttural voice. "Your kind has shown little interest in such things before." "That's why we're here," Ryan said. "To change that, to start over." As the discussion continued, Laura noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. Some of the Krill advisors exchanged glances, their body language suggesting disagreement. One younger officer, standing near the back of the chamber, seemed particularly uneasy. His posture was rigid, his antennae twitching nervously. Laura caught his eye briefly and gave him a small, reassuring nod. She didn't know why, but something about him felt different, less hostile, more uncertain. Meanwhile, aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, Jake grew increasingly restless. "We should have gone with them," he said, gripping the edge of the console. "If something happens, we won't even know until it's too late." Elena sighed. "They're doing their part. Our job is to stay ready. Trust them, Jake." "I'm trying," Jake replied, running a hand through his hair. "It's just hard." Back in the chamber, Zorath leaned forward slightly, his massive frame casting an even larger shadow. "Very well," he said slowly. "We will consider your proposal. But know this, if you are lying, there will be no mercy." Ryan nodded. "Understood." As they prepared to leave, Laura glanced once more at the young Krell officer. He met her gaze again, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, she wondered if he might be an ally, or at least someone willing to listen. But there was no time to dwell on it. The shuttle doors opened, and Ryan and Laura stepped inside, the weight of uncertainty heavy on their shoulders. As the shuttle detached from the flagship and headed back toward the Dawnbreaker, Ryan exhaled deeply. "That went better than I expected." Laura smiled faintly. "For now. But this is just the beginning." Jake greeted them as they returned to the ship, his face tense with worry. "Well, what happened?" Ryan clapped him on the shoulder. "They're considering it. That's all we can ask for right now." Elena looked up from her station. "So, what's next?" Ryan's expression hardened. "We wait, and we hope." The wait aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity as the crew tried to stay focused on their tasks. Ryan sat in the cockpit, staring at the view screen that showed the Krill flagship hanging silently in the void of space. He replayed the meeting with Zorath in his mind, wondering if he had said enough or too much. Laura stayed close by, reviewing the data they had shown the Krill, double-checking every detail to ensure there were no mistakes. Jake paced back and forth, his boots thudding against the metal floor, while Elena worked quietly at her station, keeping the ship's systems running smoothly. "They're taking their sweet time," Jake muttered, breaking the silence. "What are they even doing over there?" "Thinking, maybe," Elena replied without looking up. "This isn't a decision they can make quickly." "I know that," Jake snapped. "But sitting here waiting is driving me crazy." Ryan turned to face him, his expression calm but firm. "We don't have a choice, Jake. We've done all we can for now. All we can do is wait and hope they see reason." Jake opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. Instead, he leaned against the wall and crossed his arms, glaring at the screen. "Hope isn't much of a plan. It's the only one we've got," Ryan said simply. Laura glanced at him, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "He's right. If this works, if they agree to negotiate, it could change everything. But we have to trust that we gave them enough to think about." Elena nodded. "And if it doesn't work?" "Then we fight," Ryan said, "but not until we've exhausted every other option." Hours passed, though it felt like days. The crew took turns monitoring the Krill flagship, watching for any sign of movement or communication. Finally, just as exhaustion began to set in, the comm system crackled to life. A deep, guttural voice filled the cockpit. "Humans, return to the flagship. We have reached a decision." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He exchanged a glance with Laura before responding. "Understood. We're on our way." As they prepared the shuttle for another trip to the Krill ship, Jake hesitated. "You really think this is a good idea? What if it's a trap?" "It might be," Ryan admitted. "But we don't have a choice. If we don't go, we'll never know." Jake clenched his fists but didn't argue further. Instead, he helped Laura secure the data tablet in case they needed it again. Elena walked them to the airlock, her expression unusually serious. "Be careful," she said softly. "If anything goes wrong, signal us immediately." "We will," Ryan promised. Then, with a final nod to the others, he and Laura boarded the shuttle and headed back toward the Krill flagship. The atmosphere aboard the alien vessel was different this time. When they entered the chamber, Zorath stood alone, his advisors absent. His glowing eyes locked onto Ryan and Laura as they approached. "We have considered your proposal," he began, his voice low and measured. "And we find it intriguing." Ryan's pulse quickened. "Does that mean you're willing to negotiate?" Zorath hesitated, his mandibles clicking softly. It means we are willing to listen further. However, trust must be earned. You claim not all humans are responsible for this war. Prove it. Laura stepped forward, holding up the tablet. We've already provided evidence of rogue factions within humanity. These groups acted independently and caused this conflict. If you allow us, we can help identify and neutralize them together. Zorath studied her for a moment before speaking. Your words carry weight, human, but actions speak louder. Show us you are sincere. Ryan nodded. We'll do whatever it takes. Just tell us what you need. Before Zorath could respond, the chamber doors hissed open, and the young Krill officer Laura had noticed earlier entered. He approached Zorath cautiously, whispering something in their language. Zorath listened intently, his antennae twitching. After a brief exchange, the commander dismissed the younger officer, who glanced briefly at Ryan and Laura before leaving. What was that about? Laura asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Zorath turned back to them. There are divisions among my people, as there are among yours. Not all agree with this path. But I believe it is worth pursuing, for now. Ryan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. Thank you. That's more than we hoped for. Zorath's gaze hardened. Do not mistake this for weakness, human. One misstep, and this truce ends. Understood. Understood, Ryan replied firmly. As they returned to the Dawnbreaker, Laura couldn't shake the memory of the young officer's glance. Do you think he's on our side? She asked Ryan quietly. I don't know, Ryan admitted. But if he is, he might be our best chance at building real trust. Back aboard the ship, Jake greeted them anxiously. Well, what did they say? They're willing to listen, Ryan said, a small smile forming. That's a start. Elena looked up from her station. So, what's next? Ryan's smile faded as he stared at the Krill flagship through the view screen. Now comes the hard part. The mood aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, shifted after the second meeting with the Krill. While there was a glimmer of hope, it was fragile, like a flickering flame in a storm. Ryan and Laura gathered the crew in the cockpit to discuss what had happened. Jake leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, while Elena sat at her station, listening intently. The hum of the ship's systems filled the silence as Ryan began speaking. They're willing to negotiate, Ryan said, his voice steady but cautious. But they don't trust us yet. And honestly, I don't blame them. Laura nodded. They want proof that we're serious. Proof that not all humans are responsible for this war. They're watching us closely. Jake frowned. So what does that mean? What do they expect us to do? It means we need to show them we're on their side, Ryan replied. We'll share more information about the rogue factions and how they've been using alien technology. We'll also propose joint efforts to stop them. Elena looked up from her console. That sounds risky. What if they use that info against us? It is risky, Ryan admitted. But it's the only way to build trust. If we hold back, they'll think we're hiding something. Laura added, and we can't afford to lose this chance. This might be our only shot at peace. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just don't like putting all our cards on the table. What if they decide we're still the enemy? Ryan met his gaze. Then we fight. But not until we've tried everything else. As they spoke, Laura couldn't stop thinking about the young Krell officer she'd noticed earlier. His presence during the meeting had been subtle, but she sensed he wasn't like the others. There was something in his posture, his hesitation, that made her curious. She wondered if he could be an ally, or at least someone who doubted the war as much as they did. Later that evening, Laura decided to act on her instincts. Using the ship's communication system, she sent a private message to the Krill flagship. It was brief and carefully worded. Asterisk, if you want to talk. We're listening, asterisk. She encrypted the message and addressed it to the young officer, hoping he would receive it. Meanwhile, tensions aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk crew. Jake paced the corridors, unable to shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. It's too quiet, he muttered to Alina. The Krill aren't making any moves. That doesn't feel right. Alina shrugged. Maybe they're just being careful, or maybe they're waiting for us to make the next move. Either way, it's driving me crazy, Jake said. Back in the cockpit, Ryan reviewed the data they planned to share with the Krill. He knew it was a gamble, but he also knew they couldn't sit idle. Time was running out, for both sides. As he worked, Laura approached him. I sent a message to that young officer, she confessed. I thought it might help. Ryan raised an eyebrow. What kind of message? Just an invitation to talk, Laura said. If he wants to, that is. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. It's a risk, but it could pay off. Let's see what happens. Hours passed without a response. Just as doubt began to creep in, the comm system buzzed. Laura rushed to answer it, her heart racing. On the screen appeared the young Krell officer, his glowing eyes cautious but curious. You reached out, he said, his voice softer than Zoreth's. Why? Laura took a deep breath. Because we believe there's another way. A better way. We know not all Krill want this war any more than we do. The officer hesitated, his antennae twitching. Speaking with you could cost me my life. We understand, Laura said gently. But if we don't try, nothing will change. After a long pause, the officer nodded slightly. Meet me in the lower bay of the flagship. Come alone. Laura turned to Ryan, who was listening nearby. He wants to meet. Alone. Ryan frowned. That's dangerous. I know, Laura replied. But if we don't take this chance, we might lose him. Reluctantly, Ryan agreed. Be careful. If anything feels wrong, signal us immediately. A short time later, Laura boarded the shuttle and headed to the designated location. Her hands trembled as she stepped into the Krill ship, but she forced herself to stay calm. In the lower bay, the young officer waited, his posture tense but not hostile. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. Thank you for trusting us, Laura replied. It was a small step, but it felt like the beginning of something bigger. The lower bay of the Krill flagship was dimly lit, its walls lined with strange machinery that hummed softly. Laura stood a few steps away from the young officer, her heart pounding but her expression calm. She could feel the weight of the moment. This was their chance to build a bridge between humans and Krill, even if it was just one person at a time. Why are you doing this? The officer asked, his glowing eyes fixed on her. His voice was quieter than before, almost cautious, as if he feared being overheard. Laura took a deep breath. Because we're tired of fighting. We've lost so much. Our homes, our families, our future. We don't want this war any more than you do. The officer hesitated, his antennae twitching slightly. You say that, but how can I believe you? Your kind has caused so much pain. I know, Laura admitted, and I can't change what's already been done. But I can tell you this, not all humans are the same. Some of us are trying to make things right. That's why we're here, to find a way to stop the killing. The officer studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Finally, he spoke. My name is Vector. I am uncertain about many things, about this war, about your people, about my own leaders. His voice carried a hint of frustration, maybe even anger. I see no honor in destroying an entire species. Is that truly what we have become? Laura nodded slowly. That's why I reached out to you. Because I thought you might feel the same way we do. That there has to be another way. Vector's mandibles clicked softly. If others discover I am speaking with you, I will be labeled a traitor. Yet, I cannot stand by and watch this war destroy everything. Laura stepped closer, careful not to startle him. You're not alone, Vector. There are others like you, on both sides. If we work together, maybe we can find a solution. He tilted his head, considering her words. What would you have me do? For now, just listen, Laura said. We're sharing information with your leaders about the rogue factions within humanity. the ones who started this war. If you can help us prove that not all humans are responsible, it might make a difference." Vector nodded slowly. "I will try. But trust is fragile. One wrong move, and this will collapse." "I understand," Laura replied. "We'll take it step by step." As they continued talking, Laura noticed subtle changes in Vector's demeanor. He seemed less guarded, more willing to engage. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope, not just for herself and her crew, but for both their peoples. Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, Ryan paced the cockpit, his eyes glued to the view screen showing the Krill flagship. Jake hovered nearby, his arms crossed and his jaw tight. "How long has she been in there?" he asked, his voice edged with worry. "Too long," Ryan muttered. "But we can't rush her. This could be important." Alina sat at her station, monitoring the ship's systems and keeping an ear on the comms. "She knows what she's doing," she said calmly. "We just have to trust her." Finally, after what felt like hours, the shuttle returned. Laura stepped onto the ship, her face pale but determined. Ryan rushed to meet her. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Laura assured him. "I met with Vector. He's different. He doesn't agree with the war, and he wants to help." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Help how?" "He's going to try to convince others among the Krill that not all humans are the enemy," Laura explained. "It's a small step, but it's something." Ryan exhaled sharply, relief washing over him. "That's good news, but we need to stay careful. If anyone finds out about this." "I know," Laura said, "but sometimes small steps lead to big changes." As the crew settled back into their tasks, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, they had an ally on the other side. And sometimes that was enough to keep hope alive. The fragile alliance between Laura and Vector began to take shape, but it wasn't without its dangers. Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the next phase of negotiations. Ryan reviewed the data they planned to share with the Krill, ensuring every detail was accurate. Laura sat nearby, her mind still replaying her conversation with Vector. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything could fall apart. Jake paced the cockpit, his frustration bubbling over. "I don't like this," he muttered. "We're putting too much trust in someone we barely know. What if Vector's just playing us?" Laura looked up from her tablet. "He's taking a huge risk by talking to us. If anyone finds out, he'll be in serious trouble." "Exactly," Jake shot back. "And what happens when the Krill figure out we've been sneaking around behind their backs? They'll see it as an act of war." Ryan stepped in before the argument could escalate. "We're not sneaking around. We're trying to build trust on both sides. Yes, it's risky, but sitting here doing nothing is even worse." Alina, who had been quietly monitoring the ship's systems, spoke up. "Jake's right about one thing. We need to be careful. But Laura's instincts have been good so far. Maybe this is our best chance." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, but if this blows up in our faces, don't say I didn't warn you." Meanwhile, aboard the Krill flagship, tensions were rising. Vector moved cautiously, sharing his doubts with a small group of like-minded officers who questioned the war. He knew he was treading dangerous ground, but he couldn't stay silent any longer. "This conflict has cost us too much," he told them during a secret meeting in a secluded part of the ship. "And for what? To destroy a species that isn't united against us." One of the officers, a female named Tarak, hesitated. "You speak boldly, Vector. But what do you propose we do?" "We work with the humans," Vector said firmly. "Not all of them are our enemies. Some want peace as much as we do." Tarak exchanged glances with the others. "If Commander Zorath discovers this, we'll be executed." "I know," Vector admitted, "but if we don't try, we'll lose everything." "Is that what you want?" The group fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Slowly, one by one, they nodded in agreement. Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew received an unexpected message from the Krill flagship. It was brief and to the point. Asterisk, prepare for another meeting. Bring proof of your claims. Asterisk. Ryan gathered the team to discuss their approach. This is it, Ryan said, his voice steady. They want evidence, not just words. We'll show them the data on the rogue factions and how they've manipulated both sides. Laura nodded. We'll also propose joint operations to stop these groups. It's the only way to prove we're serious. Jake frowned. And if they don't buy it, then we fight. Ryan replied simply, but not until we've tried everything else. As they prepared to leave, Alina handed Ryan a small device. It's a backup transmitter, she explained. If things go wrong, use it to signal us. We'll come get you. Ryan smiled faintly. Thanks, Alina. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. When they arrived at the Krill flagship, the atmosphere was tense. Zorath awaited them in the main chamber, his glowing eyes fixed on Ryan and Laura. You claim to seek peace, he rumbled. Prove it. Ryan stepped forward, holding up the data tablet. Here's everything we have on the rogue factions. Their operations, their leaders, their goals. They're the ones who started this war, not humanity as a whole. Zorath studied the information, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he turned to Vectar, who stood silently in the corner. What do you think, Lieutenant? Vectar hesitated, then spoke. The data appears credible. If we act together, we may be able to end this conflict. Zorath's gaze hardened. Very well. But remember, one misstep, and this truce ends. As they left the chamber, Laura caught Vectar's eye and gave him a small nod of gratitude. For the first time, it felt like they were truly making progress. The fragile truce between humans and Krill began to take shape, but it was far from secure. Aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew worked tirelessly to solidify the progress they had made. Ryan sat in the cockpit, reviewing plans for the joint operations with the Krill. Laura stood beside him, her tablet filled with notes on how to identify and neutralize the rogue factions that had started the war. Jake leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, still skeptical but willing to follow orders. Alina monitored the ship's systems, ensuring everything was ready for whatever came next. We need to move quickly, Ryan said, breaking the silence. If we wait too long, the Krill might change their minds. Laura nodded. Agreed. The sooner we act, the better. But we have to be careful. If the rogue factions find out what we're doing, they'll try to stop us. Jake frowned. And if the Krill decide we're lying, what then? Ryan met his gaze. Then we fight. But I don't think it'll come to that. Vectar and his group are on our side now. They'll help us prove we're serious. Alina looked up from her console. What about Earth? Shouldn't we let them know what's happening? Ryan hesitated. Not yet. If word gets out too soon, it could cause panic. Or worse, someone might try to sabotage the truce. We'll tell them when the time is right. As they prepared for the joint mission, tensions aboard the Krill flagship were also rising. Commander Zorath called a meeting with his advisors, including Vectar, to discuss the next steps. The humans claimed they want peace. Zorath began, his voice low and measured. But can we trust them? Vectar stepped forward, his antennae twitching slightly. They'd shared valuable information about the rogue factions. If we work together, we may be able to stop them before they cause more damage. One of the advisors, a grizzled veteran named Killith, spoke up. And what if this is a trick? What if they're using us to weaken our defenses? It's a risk, Vectar admitted. But staying in this war is an even greater one. Our people are tired. Killith, we've lost too much already. Zorath studied Vectar for a moment before turning to the others. Prepare a small team to assist the humans. If they truly mean what they say, this could end the conflict. But remain vigilant. If they betray us, we strike back without mercy. Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew received confirmation of the Krill's cooperation. Ryan gathered everyone in the cockpit to go over the plan. "We'll target one of the rogue faction's bases first," he explained. The success of the joint mission against the rogue faction's base marked a turning point, but it wasn't enough to erase decades of mistrust. Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew struggled to process what had happened. Ryan sat in the cockpit, staring at the view screen as the Krill flagship disappeared into the distance. Laura joined him, her expression thoughtful. "We did it," she said softly. For the first time, humans and Krill worked together. Ryan nodded, though his face remained serious. "Yeah, but one mission doesn't fix everything. The real challenge is convincing the rest of humanity, and the Krill, that this can work." Jake paced nearby, still uneasy about their alliance with the Krill. "It's going to be hard enough just telling Earth what we've been doing. People aren't going to like it." Alina looked up from her station. "They don't have to like it. They just have to see that it's necessary." Ryan sighed. "You're right. But how do we make them see that? Most people back home still think of the Krill as monsters." Laura stepped forward. "We show them the truth. We share the evidence we've gathered. The rogue factions, the stolen technology, the lies that started this war. If we can prove that not all humans are responsible, maybe they'll understand why peace is possible." The crew spent the next several days preparing their report for Earth. They compiled videos, data logs, and images from the mission, carefully piecing together a narrative that highlighted the shared threat posed by the rogue factions. When the transmission was ready, Ryan hesitated before sending it. He knew the reaction wouldn't be positive, but it was a risk they had to take. On Earth, the response was mixed. Some leaders were intrigued by the possibility of peace, while others dismissed it as naive or dangerous. Public opinion was divided, with protests erupting in cities across the planet. Some called for an end to the war, while others demanded retribution against the Krill. Amid the chaos, Ryan and his crew became both heroes and targets. Meanwhile, aboard the Krill flagship, Vector faced similar challenges. Commander Zoreth allowed the joint operations to continue but remained cautious. "This truce is fragile," Zoreth warned during a meeting with his advisors. "If the humans betray us, or if our own people turn against us, it will collapse." Vector stood firm. "We have no choice but to trust them. The alternative is destruction for both our peoples." Back aboard Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk, the crew received word that another rogue faction base had been located. This one was larger and more heavily guarded, but taking it out would deal a significant blow to the faction's operations. Ryan gathered the team to discuss their plan. "This is bigger than the last one," he said, pointing to a map on the screen. "We'll need more support from the Krill, and we'll need to be careful. If we fail, it could destroy everything we've built." Laura nodded. "We'll use the same approach, disable their defenses, gather evidence, and eliminate the threat. But we'll also broadcast the operation live. If people see humans and Krill working together, it might help change their minds." Jake frowned. "That's risky. What if something goes wrong?" "It's a risk we have to take," Ryan replied. "If we want peace, we have to show the galaxy it's possible." The mission was intense. The combined forces of humans and Krill fought their way through waves of enemy fighters, their teamwork improving with each battle. Laura and Vector once again worked side by side, gathering crucial data while Ryan and Jake led the assault. When the base was finally destroyed, the crew transmitted the footage back to Earth. The impact was immediate. Across the planet, people watched in awe as humans and Krill fought together, not as enemies, but as allies. For the first time, many began to question what they had been told about the war. The seeds of change were planted, not just on Earth, but among the Krill as well. As Asterisk, the Dawnbreaker Asterisk returned to its rendezvous point with the Krill fleet, Ryan felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but they had taken the first steps toward a better future. And sometimes that was enough. Years passed, and the galaxy began to change. The fragile alliance between humans and Krill grew stronger, though not without challenges. There were still those on both sides who resisted peace, clinging to old hatreds and fears. But slowly, thanks to the efforts of Ryan, Laura, Vector, and others like them, trust began to take root. The joint operations against the rogue factions continued, each success bringing humanity and the Krill closer together. Back on Earth, the debate over the truce raged for months. Some leaders argued that negotiating with the Krill was a betrayal of humanity's values, while others saw it as the only way to survive. Public opinion shifted gradually as more evidence emerged about the rogue faction's role in starting the war. People began to realize that the Krill weren't the mindless monsters they had been portrayed as. They were victims too. Ryan became a symbol of this new era. His calm determination and willingness to take risks inspired others to follow his example. He traveled across Earth and its colonies, speaking to crowds about the importance of cooperation. "We can't keep fighting the same battles," he often said. "If we want a future worth living for, we have to build it together." Laura played a crucial role as well. She worked tirelessly to promote understanding between humans and Krill, sharing her knowledge of their biology and culture. Her research led to breakthroughs in medicine and technology, benefiting both species. She also helped establish a joint research initiative to study the ancient alien artifacts that had sparked the conflict in the first place. "These artifacts are dangerous if used carelessly," she warned. "But if we work together, we can unlock their secrets safely." Jake and Elena returned to their lives after the mission, but they never forgot what they had been part of. Jake joined a coalition of pilots dedicated to protecting the fragile peace, while Elena became an advocate for repairing the damage caused by the war. Together, they proved that even ordinary people could make a difference. Vector, meanwhile, rose through the ranks of the Krill military, becoming a voice for moderation and cooperation. He faced resistance from hardliners who viewed his alliance with humans as weakness, but he stood firm. "Strength isn't measured by how many enemies you destroy," he told them. "It's measured by how many allies you create." As the years went by, the Dawnbreaker was retired and placed in a museum, a reminder of humanity's resilience and capacity for change. Visitors marveled at its battered hull, imagining the bravery of its crew. Ryan often visited the exhibit, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. One day, as he stood before the ship, a young girl approached him. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you really stop the war?" Ryan smiled. "Not alone. It took all of us, humans, Krill, and everyone else, to make it happen." The girl nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think we'll stay friends with them?" "I hope so," Ryan replied. "Because if we don't, there won't be much left to fight for." In the end, the story of the Dawnbreaker wasn't just about one ship or one crew. It was about the courage to try something different, even when the odds seemed impossible. It was about finding common ground in a divided galaxy. And most of all, it was about the belief that peace, no matter how fragile, was always worth fighting for. And so, under the light of distant stars, a new chapter began, not just for humanity, but for all who called the galaxy home.